William Hill sponsors IFL TV.
I'm the man to beat Daniel Dubois. You're going to sleep.
UMAR AHMED, IFL TV, MTK Global. We're in New York City. It's been a while since I caught up with you, which was also in New York, Crawford
Not
Park.
that long ago, like a month ago.
A month, yeah. Actually, let's talk about that. What did you make? I didn't speak to you after the fight, so what did you make of the whole ending, the quick talk, the controversy, etc.?
I didn't really think it was controversy, but it was disappointing. You know, you want to see a fight go to its natural conclusion, whether it's by a clean knockout or a decision. You don't ever like to see a guy end the fight on an accidental foul. Clearly, Terence Crawford was not trying to hit Amir Khan with a low blow. You know, we're not in Amir Khan's body. I don't know, what the situation was, whether he could continue or not. Ultimately, Virgil Hunter, his trainer, made the decision to tell the ref that it was over. And unfortunately, that's the way it goes sometimes. Disappointing ending, but I take nothing away from Crawford. He fought a brilliant fight. He was dominating. He knocked Amir down in the first round and was well on his way to an easy victory in my mind. So, it was short-circuited, but I think we knew what the result was going to be.
It was announced today that Amir Khan is going to be fighting in Saudi Arabia. I think reportedly $8 million. What are your thoughts on a sort of exhibition fight, if you like?
Well, it's an actual fight. I mean, they're fighting for a WBC regional title against a professional fighter from India that was a good amateur. Not necessarily the greatest professional, but I hadn't heard the dollar figure, but I am not surprised if he's getting that kind of money because he's not just going to pack up and do a fight unless he's highly compensated for that. But Amir's point of view was, look, he wants to carry on with his career. It's a fight that he should win. He's made note of the fact that he's a Pakistani, by his heritage, even though he's from Britain. His opponent is Indian. Obviously, there's not good relations between the country of India and Pakistan over the course of, many, many decades. So Amir's comment was sport can help bring people together. And so it'll be a big rivalry fight between Pakistan and India. But in the end, it's a sporting event. And hopefully he can, somehow mend the fences, even just a small amount. So, the folks in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah, they're putting some money behind it. It's the same location where Callum Smith won the world title super middleweight against George Groves in the World Boxing Super Series. So they're bringing another big boxing event there. It's not quite as big as Callum Smith against Groves. Obviously, it's not a big world title fight, but in that part of the world, it probably will be a pretty big event.
I've spoken to a few people this week, and they say Amir Khan should probably call it a day. How do you think he fares now at the top level of the sport?
Well, at the top level, he's going to have his issues, but if he can get $8 million, as you say you think the purse is, to go fight a guy who's 11-3 or 2 draws or whatever, where he's a heavy favorite, you take the money and go put on a good event. So I don't think Amir needs to retire, but he's going to, in my mind, he would have to do something special to get himself in a position to get another significant fight.
In terms of your Pacquiao, Thurman, Sean Porters, these guys, do you think he still competes at that level?
Not really. I mean, it's pretty obvious that his best days are past, and I've always been a big Amir Khan fan and supporter. But reality is reality. When's the last time he looked good in a fight against a quality opponent? I mean, even when he fought fighters like Vargas, I mean, not a bad fighter or anything, but a regular opponent. He had some struggles, even though he ended up winning the fight. He got knocked down. So he's had a long career. He's had a very good career. He unified the titles at 140, won a silver medal in the Olympics at age 17. He's done well for himself. I've always appreciated his fights. He's willing to fight anybody. He's made a lot of action fights, win or lose. But the time is coming to an end.
In terms of Bud, obviously we've seen Pacquiao Thurman's been announced. I'm not sure what's going on with Errol Spence and Sean Porter. What does Bud do now? It seems like a little bit of a frustrating period for him.
That's a very good question. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people would like to know. There are not a lot of opponents out there that have any kind of name recognition for him to fight. He will at some point be ordered to make his mandatory against Kavaliauskas, who's coming off the draw against Ray Robinson in a fight that most everybody thought that Kavaliauskas won, and it was a terrible decision. But he looked so bad and the fight was so terrible that nobody really got up in arms about it. So, Crawford against Kavaliauskas, he may have to do that fight to satisfy the mandatory obligation, but it's not a fight that there's any kind of public demand for. But that could be his next opponent. I think right now they're going to have to figure out what to do. Maybe if they can get a top guy at 140 to come up, I wish I had an answer for you. I really don't know.
Okay, we're here at the Garden for the announcement of Joseph Parker to Matchroom Boxing. They've got a really decent stable of heavyweights now. Obviously, Anthony Joshua, Dylan White, right at the top of the tree, and your likes of Michael Hunter, Filip Hrgovic, Murat Gassiev, Usyk, and now Parker. What do you make of Hearn tapping up Joseph Parker?
It's a good signing. I mean, it adds depth to the, like you mentioned, to the stable of fighters that Eddie has in the heavyweight division. You know, Joe Parker is not that far removed from being a world champion. He made a really, really excellent fight against Dillian White. He's got something to offer, and he can compete with any of those guys. I mean, win or lose, he's got a 3-fight contract from what they said, and he's going to take the first fight. We'll see him against most likely Eric Molina in June, at the end of the month.
On the Andrade undercard, yeah.
Exactly, and then at that point, pick a contender, and then maybe he'll be an opponent for Usyk as he goes to heavyweight to test himself. Maybe they'll do a fight against somebody like Chisora, which would be a fun fight, I think, particularly for the fans in the UK. But he basically fits in anywhere, and as Eddie has said, if he performs well in those 3 fights, maybe he can earn himself a rematch with Joshua. I mean, if Eddie Hearn is the promoter of Anthony Joshua, you always have to have fighters that you can match up. You need opponents for Joshua, and so Joseph Parker, even though he lost, he can be regenerated, and a rematch is not out of the question.
Do you think with the top guys all being with different US networks, i.e. Fury with ESPN, Wilder with Showtime, and Joshua with DAZN, do you think that's why Hearn is tapping up all these heavyweights to try and get opponents for Joshua if those fights can't be made?
No, you definitely want opponents, but my understanding is that at least in terms of a Wilder and Joshua fight, that the broadcast platforms are not necessarily going to be something that's going to be an impediment, because when Wilder did his deal with PBC, they made it very clear that, and Stephen Espinoza from Showtime and everybody made it clear that there are not going to be things that are going to prevent that big fight. That Wilder was not going to go sign some contract and be cornered and not be able to make the biggest fight possible. And with Joshua, the fights with DAZN so far have been one-offs. They're negotiating a multi-fight agreement, both sides have told me. But again, I don't think Joshua is a dummy. He's a smart person in terms of his boxing business. He has good people around him. They're not going to allow him, and he's not going to allow himself to sign a contract that's going to somehow be an impediment to the biggest fight of his life, whatever broadcaster is on. So he may sign with that network, and Wilder may be down there, but I'm sure that in the devil's in the details of the paperwork, that there will be a way for those fights to get made. With Tyson Fury, he's with ESPN, that's exclusive. They've made no real public comments that they want that rematch with Wilder right away. They don't really even talk about doing a fight against Joshua, so I suspect that we'll see him do his thing for a bit, and we'll see what happens with Fury. But the fight we all want to see anyway is Joshua versus Wilder.
So from what you're saying, you seem pretty hopeful perhaps next year Joshua and Wilder can be made?
Yeah, I think you're looking at probably at the end of next year. I think that the plan for Wilder will be he just did the Brazil fight. He's going to come back and he's going to fight, as he announced this week, a rematch with Ortiz, probably this fall. After that, probably in the first quarter of next year, he'll do the fight with Konaki. Perhaps they'll have another fight, but most likely, I would think that after Konaki, there'll be a real movement to make the Wilder-Joshua fight. Joshua fights on Saturday, has to beat Andy Ruiz Jr. Yep. He's going to have a mandatory defense that's going to be due
Pulev or Usyk, either.
Oh, the mandatory is going to be against Pulev, so they probably do that fight, give Usyk a chance to get acclimated to the weight class, maybe take a fight against Usyk, and if they both come through those fights, maybe at the end of next year, we'll finally see Wilder versus Joshua. I mean, whatever happens, happens. I don't get emotional about it anymore. I think I said that to you the last time that we talked. I've been down this road too many times with big fights, and sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. So I want to see it, but I'm not going to lose any sleep if it doesn't.
I wish I had the same attitude as you. Dan, Rafael, I appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of the fight week.
You bet it. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Hill sponsors IFL TV.
I'm the man to beat Daniel Dubois. We're doing a sleep.